bring Johnny Mack back in. John, do I have you, brother?
Yeah, you got me. Sorry about that. I got
an
important call I had to take. So
all right, well, good. It
it was
gave you
do
some
or
more.
die.
Yeah,
it was do or die. I had to bail.
No worries, brother.
Apologize.
John, your first reaction, man. Jeff Stoutland is walking away from the Eagles.
Yeah, obviously a big blow. I mean, you're talking about one of the best offensive line coaches of all time. And, he'd been here since 2013. You could argue this is, Chip Kelly's greatest move for the Philadelphia Eagles was hiring Jeff Stoutland away from the college ranks. And he turned into what he turned into. Just all the Pro Bowl players, all the all-pro players he was able to develop. If you look at the number of Pro Bowl, all-pro players the Eagles had on the offensive line for the 30 years before Jeff Stoutland. And then from the time he got here, it's astonishing the sea change. And he was able to bring here in such consistency year after year after year after year. We talked about this a little bit. From what I understand, the Eagles wanted him back, and it's his decision to walk away. For a lot of reasons, I think the Eagles are trying to change philosophies, and you can look at the obvious by the people they've hired and interviewed. They want to move to more of what the fans want them to move more to: the Kyle Shanahan style of offense, the Sean McVay style of offense, and from the running game perspective, that's just a different way of doing things than the Eagles have done since 2013. And then you're talking about a guy who's 62, 63. Apologize, Stout. I think that's his age, somewhere in that range. And you're asking, for lack of a better term, somebody who's taught a certain way so successfully to teach a different way. And I'm not sure that that's the way he wanted to go. We'll see how it shakes out. I'm sure teams around this league will try to talk him out. Right now, the Eagles expect him to be sort of an unofficial part of the organization. Like Jason Kelce.
What does that mean? Because his retirement thing, or it didn't say, sorry, it's not his retirement thing. His leaving tweet that he put out, I'll pull it up on the screen in just a second. It didn't sound like he was done. He didn't say I'm retiring.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. He's not retiring. He's right now, from the perspective is, I think his mindset is he's going to take a year off and decide what he wants to do. Maybe that is retire. Maybe it isn't retire. Then when it comes back, but I think he's going to get phone calls immediately from multiple teams around the NFL. And if they can convince him, I still think he could leave and coach. But right now, it's kind of late in the process. I don't know how many teams are looking at offensive line coaches. A number of them are, because you have all these new head coaches, but I have to look and have to gather that information. I'm sure every single one of them will call him. But yeah, if he does take that year off, he's going to be sort of the friend of the program type situation. And the goal is to keep him part of this organization. For a long time. But if he wants to go coach somewhere else, it's like, the one thing I said is the Eagles aren't firing Jeff Stoutland, and they didn't fire him. And he decided to walk away because I think they're shifting their philosophy, or they're going to try to shift their philosophy. And, it's, do you want to coach a new way of doing things? I kind of mentioned this on the show today with BLG when I was talking about the running game. It's like, I don't know if they're, you almost have to start changing personnel. You almost have to start changing different things if you want to run the sort of, the Shanahan running game that has become famous, dating back to Mike's days with the Denver Broncos and Terrell Davis. That's how far back it goes with, wide zone and the horizontal stretching and trying to cut things back. That's not what the Eagles have done. It's not what he has taught for the past 12, whatever, 13 years. And I think, he made a decision that he doesn't necessarily want to start from scratch with a different sort of run system. And yeah, as far as going somewhere else, that's up to him. Obviously, I think he'll have options. I know his wife loves it here. I know he loves the organization. But for whatever reason, the Eagles made this decision, and they're going to try to do things differently on offense. And, they're going to have to change some things. And that includes me personally. If you're asking me personally, look, I'm not walking away from Jeff Stoutland. It's like, I'm not. I get it. The offense was ugly last year. But this is a long history of demonstrated performance.
John, if that's the case, they should be ashamed. I mean, they have one bad year with the run game, and by the way, the center who did not have a good year. How much is he a part of that? That a lot of times they get Jason Kelsey up to the second level. That's been a part of their run game for years. They're going to blow him out after 1 year. I get you're saying.
Well, they're not. They did not blow him out.
I know. I know you're saying he made the decision, but John, let me tell you, it doesn't look like that, brother. It looks like they basically gave him the ultimatum, the classic thing that organizations do when they don't want to fire somebody.
First of all, it's not they. First of all, I got this from somebody very close to Jeff Stoutland. This is Jeff Stoutland's decision. I don't care if it looks like an ultimatum. They wanted him back, and he decided he didn't want to come back. So this is a Jeff Stoutland decision. There's no ultimatum. There's no you have to do this or you're getting fired. They want him to be a part of the organization. Even moving forward, he just didn't want to go down the route that they plan on going, and that's his right. But if the reality of this league is, if you're a position coach, you got to go to the direction the way the offensive coordinator wants you to go, and you have to go the direction the head coach wants you to go. And it looks like, some people will look at that as a positive. It looks like the Eagles are going to go in a different direction, and he doesn't want to go in that direction.
Let's read to the people what Jeff Stoutland put out. Jeff Stoutland tweeted out, "Philadelphia, I've decided my time coaching with the Eagles has come to an end. When I arrived here in 2013, I did not know what I was signing up for. I quickly learned what this city demands, but more importantly, what it gives back. The past 13 years have been the great privilege of my coaching career. I didn't just work here. I became one of you. Stout out." And there is Jeff Stoutland's parting message on X. And the Eagles have put up this. I shared it on your screen as well. The Philadelphia Eagles thank Jeff Stoutland for his legendary contributions to the game of football at the college and professional levels. Stout's influence throughout football is immense, having helped countless players reach their true potential, including many who went on to earn All-Pro honors and some who developed into future Hall of Fame talents. His passion for the development of young players set the bar not only for our organization, but for the entire National Football League. It is hard to fathom another coach investing more personally and professionally in their players than Jeff Stoutland. Our organization is deeply grateful for Stout's contributions to our team over the last 13 seasons. In addition to helping deliver 3 Super Bowl trips and 2 world championships to the city of Philadelphia, he has been a champion of our community, having given much of his time and effort to the Eagles Autism Foundation and many of our team's philanthropic initiatives. Although he will not be competing with us on game day, he will always be a beloved member of the Eagles family. His impact on this franchise and our community is immeasurable, and it's safe to say he will always be welcome in the city of brotherly love. There is the statement from the Philadelphia Eagles. John, appreciate your opening remarks on Jeff, and I'm happy that it was Jeff Stoutland's choice. Can't help but wonder on what's going on at the NovaCare complex. Let's start with the most obvious question. Does this mean Lane Johnson will retire? What is your thought process on Lane Johnson as it pertains to this news?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a big part of it because these guys have so much respect for, especially the veteran guys, not only Lane, but they have so much respect for Jeff Stoutland. Obviously, guys like Jordan and Landon aren't going to retire, but in the case of Lane, I still hold on to the thought that he doesn't he doesn't want it to end the way it ended. That's my take on Lane Johnson. But yeah, this could change it. And because I know how close he is to Jeff Stoutland, and same thing with him. Does he? He turned him into a Hall of Fame right tackle, and does he want to go under? Boy, and I feel I feel bad for the next offensive line coach because that's the adage is you don't want to replace the legend. You want to replace the guy who replaced the legend because, the next guy's going to have a really difficult time living up to the standard that they have had. And I mean, yeah, if this is what turned Lane Johnson into retirement, it wouldn't surprise me. But at the same time, I think if he had been playing and they lost in the playoffs and he had a full season, I might think otherwise, but I don't think he wants to end missing those final 8 games. But this certainly puts a fly in the ointment, so to speak, because I mean he loves Jeff Stoutland, and you saw Jason Kelsey here already put out a statement. Those guys love Stout. Fred Johnson, backup player. He told the most moving story about Jeff Stoutland. Like he was bitter when he got here. The Eagles picked him up. He'd been cut in a couple places, and he was like at the end of his rope with his NFL career, and he was even said he was in a dark place. And Stoutland would push him and push him and push him and treat him like a starter. And he like, leave me alone. He said, what are you doing? And he didn't give up on him. And all of a sudden he got an opportunity and played pretty well. And he credits him a lot. So there's stories like that. Brett Toth is he's been a big champion of Brett, and he came through this year. So it's not only the stars, and there's so many all pros, starting with Kelsey and Lane Johnson, but also Brandon Brooks and Landon Dickerson developing that. I remember when and Stout got the PFWA, the Pro Football Writers Legacy Award for assistant coaches, and I was talking to him. And he read my story about it, and he mentioned, yeah, you forgot Brandon Brooks with all the All-Pros. And I told him, I didn't forget him, Stout. He was never an All-Pro. He was just a Pro Bowl guy. And Stout was astonished. So he loved his guys, and it was back and forth. They loved him. He loved them. And it's going to be tough to replicate. It really is. It's going to be tough to replicate. This is similar to what we were talking about with Vic potentially retiring. But, Vic's only been here for 2 years. Jeff's been here for 13 years. And in the vast majority, this was a top-tier running game for the vast majority of the time. And certainly since Nick Sirianni had been here, it kind of stalled this season. That's how quickly things move. I mean,
it's amazing, John. All those years of success, 1 year where the running game is not even bad, by the way. Saquon, I think, was still 10 or 11 in the NFL in yards. Your center, had a very not great year. Your left guard, who's making, top in the league, did not have a good year. I mean, one of the things they do with their power run scheme that they've run with him is get offensive linemen to the second level. Did the offensive linemen who were banged up have anything to do with that? I like to think that they did, yes. And it kind of feels like people are shooing Stoutland to the side like he hasn't had this great success, and they're looking at, last year as the story of Stoutland, which I think is pretty crazy to me.
Well, I agree with you. I just wrote about it yesterday.
Yeah, I read your article on that side. I read the whole thing.
before I knew this was coming today, I wrote about it yesterday. I'm like, I don't. I mean, this guy is had to put together, help put together. Obviously, I always talk about the talent first, so it's talent first. And your point, guys declined because of injury. Saquon didn't have a as good a year. He'll be the first to admit that, and he was the first to admit that. Um, but he put together the sixth best rushing offense in the history of the National Football League. Sixth best ever. Not sixth best for a season, which is still
Right.
pretty good,
Exactly.
ever a year ago. And yeah, I'm surprised. I've been talking about it for a while. I'm surprised they're pulling the plug. But, that's the frustrating part of the NFL is when you don't reach expectations. I talk about that pendulum effect all the time. The natural nature, the human nature is to go in a different direction. And it looks like the Eagles are going in a different direction. And a lot of people will be happy by that. I mean, if you're asking me personally, yeah, I think it's insanity. Not only because if you have, you have players that excelled in that scheme, and again, you're talking about double team, pin and pull, power football a lot of the time, get to the second level with those combo blocks. Um, and they were so successful at it. And I'm saying to myself, what if you think about those Denver teams all the way back to the Mike Shanahan and Terrell Davis, like I said, they were the first to have the Kelsey types, which were guys who could really move. So, the Eagles don't have that right now with Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson at this stage of his career, even though he's pretty athletic. He's more comfortable. And same thing with Jordan Mailata. He's more comfortable. Now, Cam Jurgens is the one guy who would project to be sort of an outside zone player to me if he's healthy. But again, if he's healthy. And now you talk about how much hype have we talked about early on. We haven't even gotten to the draft, the draft hype deeply. We've gotten into it a little bit. But so many people have started talking about Caden Proctor. Well, I don't think you want Caden Proctor now. I mean, why you want a 6'7", 300, whatever he is, 50, 60-pound guy if you're going to try to replicate this horizontal sort of outside zone running game, stretch running game. You want more athletic guys. Yeah, I don't agree with it. And I don't, by the way, I don't think, and I mentioned that on the show this morning, I don't think that's good for Saquon either. Because I
I
don't
don't
think
either.
he's the most patient runner in the
No,
world.
he's not.
I think he's about hitting the hole. And if you block up everything, he's a home run hitter. Yeah, I don't agree with it. I mean, but this
John,
is
do you
where
think they
we are.
disrespected Jeff Stoutland in this process?
No, I'm telling you, they love Jeff Stoutland.
No, I know. I don't
Um,
mean intentionally. I mean, you have a guy who's accomplished what he's accomplished, and you have some young offensive coordinators who don't have a quarter, let alone a half of the resume that he has, who don't have a quarter, let alone a half of the accolades that Jeff Stoutland has. And they get some, I don't know who it is, fan, owner, Nick. I don't know who wants to change, and they kind of act like that's the right way to go. Maybe they're right. I don't know. It feels to me like it wouldn't be hard for Jeff Stoutland to be disrespected by this process, especially following the Jeff McClain report that came out a couple weeks ago that they basically demoted him, in the middle of the year last year and took away his run game responsibilities.
yeah, well, in hindsight, I mean, I don't think they took him all the way. I think it was about when they went under center because, that's something, they wanted to change to more of what they're trying to change to now, basically. And he's not the expert on that.
Right. Who do you think wants to do that, John? You think it's Nick or do you think it's an organization thing? Remember, Lurie does have the history of wanting and desiring those high-powered offenses.
Boy, that's a good question. It's such a murky situation down
Yeah,
there.
it really is.
I find it, I've been talking to Nick Sirianni, for 5 years now, and he's always had very a very very almost off-putting confidence in himself about the offense, especially when it struggled. So I find it very hard to believe he raised his arms and said, "All right, you know what? This isn't working anymore." Um, so I mean, like I said, I think he's a smart guy. He understands the political winds. He's got a very good job. Um, you know, you can hold the line and say, nope, I'm not doing this, but then you might not have that very good job. So um, I don't believe it's. I do believe Jeffrey Lurie has a big impact on things and how it's being steered. But part of it is a lot of people are just sick of watching that offense, and in some ways, I'm with them because I've called it
So
from
we've
day.
gone from scapegoat and coordinator. Let's scapegoat. We're sick of the ugly offense. It's all Jeff Stoutland's. It's all on Jeff Stoutland,
Well,
right?
no, I don't
I
think
know you're
that. I
not
mean,
saying that. I mean, this just
you
comes
already
across that way.
fired the offensive coordinator. Not fired him, but demoted him. He's technically not gone. The passing game coordinator, technically not gone, but they hired a new one, so
Yeah.
you can figure out what's going to happen there. Scott Leffler's been here for 1 year. Well, he ain't coming back because saw the news today, and which by the interest, they're talking about Greg Olson, who's 62 years old, and I looked it up. He's coached for just under 30% of the teams in the NFL. He's been around a very long time. And the other guy they interviewed is 30 years old. They went with a 62-year-old guy and a 30-year-old guy. So it's they're all over the board. Uh, and look, there's going to be significant change on the offensive side of the ball. And yeah, from talking to Nick Sirianni, I remember the one quote where he had when he gave up play calling and he was explaining it and he used everybody and he said, I don't care if it's Jeffrey Lurie calling the plays, Dom calling the plays, Howie calling the plays. As long as I'm here, this is my offense. That's what he said. And up until last season, that was the case. Um, Even during the Kellen Moore year. Now, I don't know if it's going to be the case. And boy, I find it very hard to believe he just woke up one day and said, I don't have my finger on this. So yeah, I think there's other parts to it than just Nick Sirianni.
Couple more questions here for Johnny Mack. We're going to break it all down on Birds 365 tomorrow morning from 8 to 10 a.m. on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. We will do a deep dive in what's going on here with the loss of Jeff Stoutland. So, John, correct me where you think I need to be corrected here. All right. The offense obviously has a brutal year first year under Kevin Patullo. I think over 80 hits in the backfield for Saquon Barkley. I think over 40 yards, 40 rushes where you got hit behind or tackled behind the line of scrimmage. The offense was obviously brutal. They start interviewing OC candidates who want their own run games, kind of a trend going back to when they interviewed Cliff Kingsbury. They hire Mannion, who technically comes from the Shanahan-McVay tree. The writing was on the wall. Stoutland's either getting demoted or pushed out, and the 63-year-old two-time Super Bowl champion was not going to accept a demotion and a scheme change. Read the room, left the organization on his own terms. Is that what it looks like then?
Other than demotion, yeah, I wouldn't push back on anything. I'm not sure. I mean, from multiple sources, I've been told that the Eagles wanted Jeff Stoutland back. Um, I mentioned this a couple days on the show. Like I think these run game, pass game coordinator titles are just that. Um, you know, I think they're over emphasized. So I would push back on demoted. Eagles wanted him back, but they wanted him to shift in, teach in a different way to get the guys ready for what's coming or what they hope is coming. And I don't think at this stage of his career, after having so much success with the way he's done it, that Jeff wanted to go in that direction. So he said essentially thanks, but no thanks. And this was always, look, when Nick Sirianni, it's very rare for a position coach to last through 3 head coaches.
Yeah.
Very rare. And he thought he was leaving when Nick came in because of the same type of thing. He you want some assurance that you're going to be able to do your job, especially if you're successful. You want to do it the way that has made you successful. Now with it's the same head coach, but they're making a change, or at least preparing to make a change offensively that he's not necessarily comfortable with. So, and from the Eagles standpoint, for whatever reason, they decided to go in the direction they're going offensively. I mean, I can disagree with it. I do disagree with it, but if that's the way they're going, maybe they should have a different offensive line coach.
Well, John, you used to say on Birds 365, still do say, be careful what you wish for. I think people are going to get what they wished for here. Just to give you guys a rundown of the big picture for all listening, don't forget to hit that like button. The OC is gone. All right, Patullo fired. Mannion has been hired. The O-line coach and run game coordinator, gone. Stoutland has walked. Your defensive pass game coordinator and secondary coach, Christian Parker, gone. Defensive coordinator, contemplative retirement, Vic Fangio, 67 years old. I wonder if he's rethinking things. We'll find out. QB coach, likely gone after interviewing somebody today. Wide receiver coach, at risk. Tight end coach, at risk. John, this might be the most significant Eagles coaching overhaul since this era started.
Yeah, it definitely already is, because
right.
not only do you lose, and Christian Parker got a promotion, but there's nothing you can do about that.
This is like a Chip Kelly type of overhaul here.
Yeah, I mean, typically when you have, you rarely lose. Well, you rarely have assistant coaches that have the pedigree of Jeff Stoutland. So anytime you lose somebody like that, it's significant, which doesn't happen. As it doesn't happen. Like I said, 13 years over 3 different head coaches. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So the fact that he lasted as long as he did is kind of amazing. And sometimes we do talk about shelf life all the time. Sometimes the shelf life just ends in the NFL, and I think that's the case here. And it'll be interesting to me. The most interesting part because he's going to get phone calls, man. Does he want to coach right away? Remember, this reminds me of Jim Schwartz, who could read the room and saw what was going to happen with Doug Peterson, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to retire." And he retired for 4 weeks.
A couple days.
It wasn't even a month, I don't think. And then he was back as the defensive coordinator in Tennessee. It's going to be interesting. Not that Jeff said he retired. From what I understand, he plans right now, but this is immediate. He plans to take the year to figure out what he wants to do, and maybe that is retirement. And contemplate. But I'll tell you, as soon as those he might change his mind right away.
John, change is a funny thing. People have an odd relationship with it. It's personal to each person. Many fear it. Some embrace it. Do you think there's any way to spin this that change is good right now for this team, especially in this area?
Yeah, you could spin it. I mean, if you're a positive person, there's people that spin everything positive.
I'm looking for a
Um,
truth bomb, John, not a spin job, though. That's the problem. I know I asked
uh,
one, but
well, I mean, I think more people than not would say that this offense had to change. I think that's why we're in the position we're in, because those voices won out. Um, and the vast majority of people listening to this show believe that. So it shouldn't be hard for them to spin it in a positive fashion. For me, it's much more difficult because I know how good Jeff Stoutland is. I know what his students think of him. I know what everybody in that offensive lineman thinks. I can't even, I've heard Jordan Mailata talk so glowingly about this guy. I don't know what Jordan. I might have to check in with Jordan because he's going to be upset by this. Yeah, I mean, when and I've said it numerous times. Like I said it going back to Cliff Kingsbury. If you don't want Jeff Stoutland to be your offensive line coach, I don't want you to be my offensive coordinator. That
John,
that
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 sums
has
up my entire position.
that has never changed for me.
Agreed.
So, I mean, if you're asking me on a personal level, do I agree with the Eagles going? That's my litmus test. If you don't want Jeff Stoutland to to be your offensive line coach, and by the way, the Eagles would certainly push back. They did want him to be the offensive line coach. So I'll add the caveat: if you don't want him to be the offensive line coach and do what has made him so successful to be where he is in his career, well, I don't want you to be my offensive coordinator.
Right. John, what are the options right now? Who do you think? Any names come to mind? I mean,
Oh,
this is not an
I
easy
have no
position to
idea.
fill.
I mean, first of all, offensive line coaches aren't on the tip of everybody's lips. I mean, Jeff Stoutland's rare. There's guys. Um, Callahan, and he's already where did he end up?
He just went somewhere. Shoot, where did he go? Let me
Yeah, he ended up. He's already. Ledford left Atlanta. He's already in Baltimore. Um, there
That's
aren't.
where Callahan went to Atlanta.
Oh yeah, he went back with Stefanski.
Yep.
Yeah. So, um, you're not going to get. Chris Cooper's out there. I know he got fired. You're not going to get a splash at offensive line coach
No.
number one because there's only like three or four that people know, and Jeff is obviously at the top of that list.
Who's the
Callahan's
stout guy, the stout disciple that they lost last year? I think it was to the Raiders.
uh
Be nice to have him right now. But I guess they don't want to go that way anyway, so they're going to go a different route, I guess.
no. Well, Greg Austin is the assistant offensive line coach. TJ Paganetti was the um, assistant offensive line coach. He went to New Orleans with Kellen
New
Moore.
Orleans, right?
And they hired Greg Austin, this is the second time back. But yeah, I can't imagine them just promoting Greg. But maybe he's willing. I mean, maybe he's willing to go in that different direction, and maybe it's as simple as that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's not like offensive coordinator or head coach, and you're going to recognize these names. Most people aren't going to recognize these names.
The offensive side of the coaching staff is gutted. Do you think the personnel is next to follow, John, or you think this is revamp the coaches and get this personnel playing better?
Well, it's going to be an interesting conversation because look, if you want to show some patience and if they're inside the Novacare complex and saying, you know what, we're not that close. Let's reboot this thing.
Yeah.
Um, let's trade AJ Brown. Uh, if Lane goes into retirement, um, let's let Dallas Goedert walk. Jahan Dotson's obviously going to walk. Not that he's that impactful, but you need a wide receiver 3. I mean, a lot of guys
Are we there,
potentially.
John? Does that make sense to think? Am I off base? I mean, I know things move quick, but shit, man,
Well,
it
yeah,
doesn't
I'll,
feel
I'll
like we
tell you
should
what,
be there yet.
it makes more sense than when we started this conversation and Jeff Stoutland was still here. It makes more sense to say, all right, we're going to have some growing pains with Sean Mannion. Let's get younger on offense. Let's get cheaper on offense. Let's start to draft offense and let's start to develop those players. Um, but yeah, um, he's it's a tough loss, man.
Howie Roseman's got his work cut out for him this offseason. I'll tell you that much. John, last question for you tonight, and then we'll get you tomorrow on Birds 365. Full breakdown of this, full reaction. We'll talk to John Stolness in hour number 2 tomorrow on Birds 365. How bad does this look? And I want you to, I know you don't like the word perception, but I also know you're smart enough to understand the impact it can have. How bad does this look on Nick Sirianni?
Well, I think there's a lot of optic issues for Nick Sirianni. So I think he's really in the hot seat. I mean, there's no question. Just from the standpoint of turning the offense over to somebody with such little experience, and now all of a sudden you're a Hall of Fame level assistant coach is out the door because you're changing philosophies. I mean, yeah, but there's also part of it, as I said, I kind of talked about that with I think it was BLG today as well. It's like, what is that dynamic when you have somebody who's done it at the level that some of these assistant coaches have done it, and all of a sudden a 33-year-old guy, and I don't want to rip Sean Mannion because everybody speaks glowingly about him.
Pressure's on, Sean. I don't give a shit how old you are, how much experience you got.
Well, yeah, I mean the pressure, which is why it didn't make sense to me, which is why I would have went in a different direction. I mean, they're putting incredible part of, if you're the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, I always joke, you're going to get shit on, but that's part of it. Doesn't matter who you are, what your name is, what your experience is, you're going to get shit on. That's just part of it. But it would be nice if you're that young in your coaching career to be in a different, more laid back situation. And he's not going to be in that situation. I think I think it was a bold move by the Eagles. I said it, and a strange move, because look, all anybody talked about, you talk about perceptions, Xander. All anybody talked about was, well, Patullo is a first-time play caller. He's and then you go hire another first-time play caller with less experience. Where does that compute with the optics of the situation? So you can look at that good and say they don't give a crap, which is good. Or you can look at it as a bad situation because here comes the, second guessing. I'm gonna put the over under by second quarter, week 1, when the second guessing starts.
And the booze. How about that? I'll give you a game 1. The booze will rain down at Lincoln Financial Field. John, we will see what happens here. I do not think this is good. I don't know how. I will look through it tonight and bring you guys some more intel tomorrow. But John, to me, this looks horrible. That's how I view it. Horrible. And by the way, I don't know if it's Nick, man. I'm starting to wonder if the upstairs is making Nick change the offense, especially after hearing you talk about how much confidence he had. I mean,
Yeah,
one
well,
year they're
yeah,
still at
I
11 wins this
definitely,
year.
I
I mean,
definitely
they're
think.
down. Their down years though are 11 wins.
Yeah, I mean, when again, you can look at it a good way when there's nothing wrong with high expectations, but there's also nothing wrong with, being sensible either, and realizing that 11 wins when basically everybody on offense doesn't play up to their previous standard ain't that bad. I think more people in that building should have recognized that, but they didn't, seemingly.
John, good stuff. I will talk to you tomorrow, my friend. Your final thought on the departure of Jeff Stoutland tonight.
All-time great coach, all-time great teacher. And, in the coming days, I'm sure you already saw it from Kelsey. You'll see it from everybody else. They will speak, his offensive linemen will speak glowingly of him. Very tough, but very fair. And nobody developed more offensive linemen over the last 13 years to the level that he did in the NFL. So to think you're going to get better because you're shipped into concepts and you're shipped in the scheme. I always tell people, teaching is the most important part of coaching. And to think you're going to get better than Jeff Stoutland, if any fans are saying that because they're drinking the Kool-Aid, it ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen.
Johnny Mac, good show. I'll talk to you in the morning. All right, brother?
All right, see y'all.
All right, thanks, Sean. Johnny Mac, John McMullen joining me right here on a special breaking news edition.